watch it later. So welcome everyone. What an evening we have. So I'd like to start and welcome everyone. And on behalf of Grey Brews Sustainability Network and United Way Grey Brews, I would like to welcome you all this evening. I am excited to be part of our community guidance network and building this network together, offering you support and creating beautiful, welcoming spaces in this region. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Simona Friebergova, and for the last 2 years, I have been kicking for GBSusNet and growing big with Meaford Community Guidance. My goal is to inspire people to grow local organic food in our communities, either on your own or in the community guidance settings, and share the surplus of fresh fruit and reach out to more people to share the love of growing. I'd like to remind you that tonight's session will be recorded, and if you have any questions, please use our chat room and we are going to answer your questions after our presentation. The next step, I'd like to set intention. My tonight's intention is to connect and share skill and surpluses. Tonight's emphasis are on respect the earth, care for the people, and fair shares. I'd love to inspire you to grow food, harvest, and share with others. And before I introduce you to our other speaker, I would like to acknowledge and give sincere thank you to the First Nations as the traditional keepers of this land. So let me introduce Ivan Chen. Ivan is my friend, and Ivan has been cultivating his farm since 2012 in Meaford. His farm is called Eden in Season, and he's growing perennial vegetables, herbs, berries, special different tree fruits and nut trees and mushrooms. And Ivan has been involved in the Gleaning program since 2014. And we have more people joining us. So before we start, I'd like to just ask you whether you know what gleaning means. Somebody asked me what gleaning means. So would anybody would like to answer that? Okay, Danuta, go for it.
For me, it means gathering or finding. So locating and gathering.
Very good. Very good. That's exactly what it is. Gleaning is a simple act of collecting excess of fresh fruits from farms, gardens, farmers, farmers market, grocers, restaurants, but also from backyard gardeners in order to provide it to those in need. So that's what gleaning is, and that's what we're gonna share with you, the program that has been started in Meaford. So I'm gonna give the word to Ivan.
Thank you, Simona. Hello, everyone. We have a relatively smaller group, so if there's a question that pops up, you're welcome to stay unmuted as long as your indoor setting is quiet enough. And I think we'll just move on from there. We're going to hope for a 40-minute presentation and reserve the last 20 minutes for questions. And we'll go from there. Thank you. Once again, thank you, Simona, for acknowledging the First Nations. This Saugeen Peninsula, Grey Bruce County resides within the land, traditional First Nations land of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Some other people might know the Pitoon or the Tiamnantati, the Odawa, or the Neutral Nations as being within their lands as well, depending on where you are geographically. And yeah, just to add on to the term gleaning with respect to First Nations, I don't want to just do a blind land acknowledgement. I would like to add on to that, or maybe perhaps bring some context to that based on what the First Nations have done. So gleaning, as Simona has added on, is not just foraging, but is also to bring what otherwise would go to waste or would otherwise be of too much excess, and to distribute that, to share that, to collect what you can. And the First Nations in this area did that very much so. They maintained lands that were periodically burned, slashed and burned. They did horticulture, they planted nut trees in odd places, and they came back 10, 20 years later to harvest from that, leaving so much of it for nature and leaving so much of it for other people to harvest from as well. They not claim exclusive access. They shared all that they can with nature, with humans, and with the spirits. So based on that, that's where I'd like to communicate that this is not a new thing, that it's been practiced, and we hope to continue to practice this much into the future. Simona and I did go through or we did have an informal chat with Natasha Akawenzi of the Chippewas of Nawash Nation. So we hope to find an opportunity to work with them. And with that, we hope to make this not just a land acknowledgement, but to also call us a reconciliation invitation. So we're inviting them to join us. I forgot to advance the slides. I'm working on 2 computers, so I think I'm advancing my slide, but I'm actually not. So feel free to prompt me. I will hold this slide for a bit, so feel free to take some time to reflect on what that means to you, being on this land as a settler or as a First Nations. Okay. So yeah, what you see here is, I think 2018, the year before COVID, or maybe just before COVID hit. And it looks like it's a pear harvesting day at David Galbraith's orchard. This is David right here. Do you want to continue this on, Simona?
Sure. So on this picture, you can see just a snapshot of Pear Harvest. This is the only orchard that we have in Meaford that David, as Ivan mentioned, he allowed us for a few years already come to his land and to harvest his pears. He purchased this land 5 years ago, and basically there are pears that has been growing there for 30 years or so on this land. So he obviously doesn't want to it's too much pears for himself, so he is sharing it with us because we donate to the charity. So we are very fortunate and grateful for this generosity of this orchard and this land. Yeah, it works quite well together. We put volunteers together, and we will talk about later how this program works.
There's Mary over there on the far right. She is also to be acknowledged as being involved in this program since the beginning, 2014. Hello, Mary. So typical to the land acknowledgement, when we enter the orchard, we also get permission, like not only after getting permission, but we also check in with each other, say hello to each other, and get comfortable with the setting, because there's a few things to note, like health and safety. There's maybe what the landowner doesn't want you to pick. Hey, I've already picked from here. This row of pears is for later on. And just to get oriented as a team before we start picking it. It's one thing to like pick en masse, and it's another thing to actually go, oh, I'm taking thanks for the fruits that are here because they were grown here several generations ago by someone else for, you know, the benefit of someone forward in time. And so maybe it's something for us to think about as our responsibility for the future generations that follow. So something to think about.
So the fresh produce surplus, so we feel that where there is a food surplus and willing community, there is also an opportunity to collect, glean, and share the surplus. So we call this as a social enterprise model, but one of the mission, basically the major mission of this program is to glean good quality food and that would otherwise go to waste, because the landowners just cannot pick it all, or they don't have the manpower to do so, and we connect the food to people in need. This is a very volunteer-led organization. It's basically based on volunteers that helping with the collection, harvesting, distribution, and processing of the surplus. The possibilities or the main distribution is the sources that come from are not only the orchards. We have farmers, land orchard owners, but we also have a community gardens that they grow extras. And we also have a backyard gardeners. One of the ethical thing for us is the unspray food. So we are definitely giving a preference, if not only for unspray food or organically grown food. The way how we distribute the produce is mainly with the food banks, the meal programs like O-Share, church dinners, United Way programs, and also with the community members and volunteers. Next
Trying to move my
slide.
screen. There we go.
So the way how we share the gleaned food, the general rule is that 1/3 of the produce is offered to the landowner if they wish. 1/3 goes to the volunteers, and 1/3 is distributed to the local foods, meal programs, schools, and other organizations. Some of the fresh produce is also sold through local markets to cover program expenses to sustain this program. So there is a number of opportunities how we can distribute this food. And Ivan will tell you a little bit of the history. That's the next slide.
Yeah, we'll also delve into each more of these 1/3 sections. We're just glossing over it at this point. So like I said, it started in 2014. There was a Grey Bruce Simcoe food needs conference. I forgot what the name was, but I remember Jaden being there. I remember 7 or 8 other people also being interested in this initiative. We called it Second Harvest, but it basically meant gleaning, given that we are in the apple belt in the valley between Meaford and Collingwood. There's so much opportunity, especially unmanaged, unsprayed feral orchards. So that was, I guess you call it a low-hanging fruit. And that's pretty much been the low-hanging fruit since. As Simona has spoken to, there are various other initiatives whereby the community gardens or other people will also share food based on their surplus. Yeah, so in terms of partnerships, it's not just food banks. It depends on, sometimes there's another community group from elsewhere that wants to come and pick. Like one year we had a Margaret who came from the Wickwadong and she gave some applesauce to them. We've helped out at the Christchurch Anglican as well. So they've been helpful for providing commercial kitchen space and bringing their congregation over to help process. One year, I think the first year, Jaden Calvert brought the Meaford Knights hockey team to do a little bit of a group pick. So a bit of a team building exercise. And so there's more opportunities there. There could be corporate events, there could be more volunteer events, but based on what the needs are, it's usually a bit of a fall window for picking and maybe a late fall for processing of food. So that's the time in which we're in most demand. So if there's a group that would complement that, that would be the most sought after thing. Simona has since come into the scene and she's taken a position since 2019 to participate in this, given that Jaden has been very busy and now is in medical school in Australia.
Right.
So this is one of the examples of yeah, where we do community like visibility, and yeah, Simona will explain this.
So we, in 2019, we got this idea, if we have too many apples and we process the apples and do everything with them like canning apple pies and apple crumble and all that, we also felt that why don't we press our own apples and into a cider? So we applied for a grant and we got apple press. So what you see on the picture is on the left side is the new apple press that came that we ordered, and we presented at the farmers market, and we press super fresh juice for people to not only to try it but also to see it how it's done. So that was very exciting for us to see, and we were very fortunate to do so. So all it does, we are basically on the table, we are cutting the apples, putting it through the grinder, and then pressing it to the lower chamber, and then pouring it freshly done.
Whoops, sorry. Trying to use my cursor as a laser pointer, but I get too trigger happy. I also wish to highlight that when we're pressing cider, we may not necessarily be using the picture perfect apples. Those in fact are considered like the best grapples that are worth storing. But often the first pickings go straight to the volunteers and to charity. So we give to the pickers and to the people in need right away with the best quality apples. What is stored is probably about 50% of what we see in the orchard. And then after a couple of months of storage, about 30% of that goes bad. So there's a lot of picking and sorting throughout the process, which allows us the opportunity to do, like, let's say an early winter applesauce making workshop, or something else with apples, such as apple crumbles, dehydrating apples that we've done, pears we've done in syrup as well. So I was also mentioning the apple crumble because that we found is an opportunity to sell something during Christmas time, because that's a more popular thing during Christmas time, to do a gift thing. And we've sold at the Meaford Christmas market as well, pre-COVID. Wanted to step back to the previous slide. I didn't get a chance to say that of the apple orchards that are allotted for us to pick from, we don't even, I was saying there's like a 50% chance that we'll pick that apple based on the quality of the fruit. But based on how many apples are in the trees, we don't even get to pick 30% of the entire orchard, if at all. What we have here is more of a rural model, whereby we have less people, but we have a lot more apples, especially being in the apple belt. So that's one kind of opportunity, but also one potential we have for growth, to partner with other groups to have more volunteers assist with the processing or picking process. Which moves us on to the next slide. We are, I believe, the sole rural model. I've not done an extensive search, but from what we have found, I first learned about fruit tree gleaning about 15 years ago when I was in Victoria. They had a life cycles project, and they actually had a paper map. I'm sure they now have an online map, but back then they had a paper map with push pins for color-coded for each different type of tree. And they had volunteers all lined up, and like on that scale, it's a lot more organizing, and it's also a lot less productivity, I'd say. But you have a lot of fruit trees in Victoria, being in a very mild climate. And so that's Victoria. That's a long established program. Toronto has a program called Not Far from the Tree. Guelph, no, what is it? Ottawa has a program called Hidden Harvest. We've recently touched base with them and gotten a response on their model. I'll go back to that later. Guelph has one. I believe Kitchener-Waterloo and Barrie is short for funding, so I'm not sure if they're running anymore. So we're not dealing with a hugely, like, we're still working out tweaks. It's not like there's a clear path as to which way to model this charity/social enterprise. But either way, every single one of these models is based on giving the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and then covering their expenses through generating some revenue or sponsorships Perhaps I know the bigger organizations like Toronto and Hidden Harvests, they have a number of sponsors, Government of Canada, corporate sponsors, grants to cover for those expenses. Just trying to think of, yeah, I believe Barrie and Waterloo are no longer running. I think Mary might have spoken to Barrie's group. Yeah, they did not get the grants that they applied for. And then I think COVID hit, and so they just put a pause on things. So all of the businesses, sorry, all of these cities that have fruit tree gleaning projects, except for the city of Ottawa, are established charities. Ottawa, as of just last week's website update, I thought they were a for-profit, but I think they've just recently transitioned to now being a charitable organization. And even when it was run as a for-profit, they merely did that to enable them to generate revenue to pay for the entire program. They gave more than 50% of all pickings when they were a for-profit to charity and to volunteers. So that's the background. So landowners come to us, and the majority of our programs, landowners are the orchards. And as Simona said, we have a preference for the unmanaged organic orchards, if you want to call it that. They either bought into a property that isn't their business, that is, they're not an orchardist themselves, or they have a lot of excess trees that they have too much of excess of. So part of what we want to do is to find a way to acknowledge their generosity to us. And although they may not want 1/3 of all that we harvest as a share of their crop, which would be a heck of a lot, it's nice to acknowledge them in the paper, acknowledge them on a webinar like this, on the website, possibly perhaps issue a tax receipt for a donation of their produce. And they also have, it would be a nice gesture to also give them apple cider, because if we have a value-added product, it's not just apples. If we have an apple cider, we've given a couple of jugs of apple cider to the landowners this past year, apple crumble, anything that's just shows that we've made some thoughts to them. And they also are considerate for things like trespassing. So seeing a lot of people picking could be an invitation for other people to pick at leisure. So we've made signs that we've put on the front lawns or the property driveway of business of the farms that we've been at, that indicate that we are the gleaning program, and if they want to get involved, they can contact us at Transition Beeford. Anything you wish to add, Simona? I guess there's liability insurance and
some of the owners do ask for insurance, and because they don't want to be liable. So it's something just to consider, that each owner has a different request, but we are insured. So our volunteers are insured when we step in, but we do not encourage our volunteers to go on the ladders. So we are keeping it as low-key as possible and safe. Yeah, the charitable status. So we already touched base on it, but in order to work with the charity, it allows us to apply. It allows us to apply for grants and to do to process the administration, to do the insurance, and basically connect with all the recipients and do the tax receipts and all the details that are coming with that. But yeah, they are beneficiaries, as we said, it's the food bank, meal programs, the good food box could be as well, community church suppers, and volunteers for sure. Ivan, do you want to add anything?
that's good. So this is more of an opportunity, like I mentioned earlier, about an opportunity to partner, collaborate with other groups. So I think we've already talked about this. Pre-COVID, we were able to have a stand at farmers markets along with the community gardens and my business Eden in Season. We've been at the Me for Christmas market during that Christmas rush with cider, with apple chips, apples, and the apple crumble. And then this past winter, we were able to sell a good amount of the apples and cider at Eat Local Grey Bruce. So that's been it's been a godsend because they've embraced the local unsprayed apples, and they've also been able to suggest to the farmers, is there an opportunity for their surplus to be gleaned for community need? So Simona has put a call out to the Eat Local producers.
Yeah, the opportunity with Eat Local is not only with the second harvest, but basically the idea is to share the surplus again, if it's a farmer or backyard gardeners, just to share with other people. And instead of going to a compost, there are a lot of meal programs that can actually process some of the extras. So that's the whole idea to do that. I'd like to emphasize the fact that if before COVID, pre-COVID, we were able to get together and process it ourselves as a learning opportunity, but we are going to talk about it a little bit later, maybe next.
So we spoke about partnerships and social enterprise model, and the objective of generating a little bit of revenue is so that you have a constant, you have enough cash flow to pay for expenses. This could be for food processing, community kitchen rental, purchasing of all the things I'm trying to use my finger to point at things, but people obviously can't see it. So the canning jars, the supplies, sugar, whatever it takes to do that stuff. And then for picking, we have picking baskets, picking bags, rental of the cold storage facility, transportation to sell, farmers market fees, all those sorts of things, and picking ladders. So that's all part of the expenses incurred. And the social enterprise model enables, what did we say? Anything you wish to add to this one, Simone?
No, I think you said it perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically in MIFRED, we have community kitchen where we were able to gather and process did applesauce. We already name all the goodies that we did in the kitchen. But the biggest thing I found that we are providing the community, it's not only getting the food, but it's the educational and the social programming. So encouraging people to healthy eating, cooking, preserving, and processing. And even it's a imperfect and surplus produce, we can still be able to do that and share among ourselves. So I think that that is a win-win situation right there.
So where possible, we involve the community and other groups in the process. And then at a certain point in time, you're still swimming in apples as we are here. And so we've gone through a commercial press. Like we have done the cider press at the farmer's market, as you've seen in the previous slide. So when there's too many apples, you have to sort the apples into a bin that's 20 bushels, drive it all the way down. And the closest press, believe it or not, is in Elmira, which is only seasonal. And then last month, I had to go down to Ancaster in Hamilton to do another press. But with one bin of apples, you're able to juice out about 250 to 300 liters of apple cider, which then has to be frozen. So there's a bit of a process involved, but it's a storable product. It's compressed, or rather it's compact, although it does need to be frozen and then sold after that. So that's what happens when you have volunteers, and then when there's too much apples to go around, you have to revert to commercial scale things. That's showing us more pics of what we were doing. That's applesauce, and then we were peeling the apples using the spiral rotary peeler. We had burnt a little bit of the pot there, but had lots of fun. It's nice to socialize with each other and play some music and get into the groove. Yeah, that was the hot water canning method. And then on the right, we were making apple crumble prior to the Christmas market at Many Hands.
So there is a number of roles to play. As you can see, it takes a lot of coordination, volunteers, picking, harvesting fruit, storaging, distributing to food banks, and also processing. But there's a lot of opportunities to that anybody can pick whatever they like to be, what kind of role they would like to play, and share with each other. Mm-hmm. So there's basically a little bit of everything for if you want to be indoor or outdoor or just on the computer, gathering interest or, you know, posting it on social media. But you can definitely enjoy the outdoors and enjoy the warm autumn when you're in the orchard. It's such a sacred spot to be to harvest apples and pears. So the opportunities, yeah, go ahead.
So likewise, the opportunities are also, I wouldn't say unlimited, but are also numerous. What we speak here is the Meaford model. Simona has been working with community gardens throughout Grey Bruce, and hopefully our intention is to put it out there to wherever the public in Grey Bruce are, to establish something similar or to maybe partner with us to bring more gleanings to social benefit and use. So here's some more ideas in addition to what we've already discussed. Highlighting the Trick or Eat program. I think a couple of us did this in Collingwood the first year or two, and so it gives the adults an excuse to go trick-or-treating. So let's say the adults are going trick-or-treating with kids and the adults just stay at the sidewalk while the kids do door-to-door knocking and plunder for candy. But with here, the adults get to dress up, the adults get to knock on the doors as well and collect non-perishable foods for the food bank or another charitable organization. So I remember doing that for a couple of years in the past, and obviously we get a little candy as well, but it enables us an opportunity to have a one-on-one with with the property owner, and to share a little pamphlet and to discuss the food bank and the second harvests or cleaning programs that we've been doing and potentially get them involved. And the ideas are limitless, nearly.
Yeah, so we are getting closer to the end. One of the biggest thank you, as we said at the beginning, is to give to the traditional land keepers, Sojina Jibay Nation, but we get a lot of support, generous support from United Way, Community Foundation Grey Bruce, who provides us with the grants, and then the landowner orchards landowners like Stephen Ormsby, David Galbraith, Candy Yinley, and Henry Smaller. I'd like to also mention Side Road Farm and Eat Local Grey Bruce, because Side Road Farm, there is a story that Side Road Farm, even though it's not a gleaning program, but they've been partnering with Meaford Community Gardens since last year. And whenever they have a leftover, not only food and fresh produce, but also seedlings. So seedlings that they overgrew or they have extras, they just basically share it with Meaford Community Gardens. So there's a huge potential to partner and build this community, so it goes back to the community. So I really enjoyed it, and with Eat Local Grey Bruce, we are working on a program to share the surpluses as well, from their producers to meal programs and perhaps even the food banks.
Great. And like I said earlier, this is an invitation for you, if you know anyone or would like to participate in the Gleaning program. Our email is right there. You will reach both of us at that email.
Or you can email me directly. Noreen knows me and Danuta as well. So you can just go directly. So yeah, thank you so much. Namaste, and we'll get to your questions. I've seen some questions. So one of the questions that Danuta asked, how do you find your community sources? So I wanted to know what sources, and you are saying sources like owners of orchards, backyard gardeners, and extra. So I think that this is before me, and Ivan can talk about it, but a lot of landowner orchards people that reaching to us. So basically, usually we have farmers reaching out to our food bank saying, I have a surplus, would you like some? So that's the generosity that we get approached by the farmers or landowners directly. But there are some connections that Ivan and Jaden started way before me. So maybe Ivan, if you want to touch base on that.
I would probably give most of the credit to Jaden in this case. Jaden is born and raised in Meaford, and he's very social and involved in everything community, food security, food related type initiatives out there. So just from being out in the thick of everything, as Simona is now, you naturally get connected with the people that that have this niche to fill. So I would say just being out there is one step. Being in a small town, obviously, is one of those things.
But I think that I inherited a list of volunteers.
That's true.
And we are slowly building it up. So basically when people are reaching out to us, oh, I would love to be part of it. And I would say that Transition Meaford, which is the climate action team in other municipalities, is kind of blending together with Meaford Community Gardens and the Gleaning program. We are basically one big family. We don't distinguish. We are very inclusive, and whether you're young or old or disabled or not able or anything, we are just super inclusive, and anybody is welcome, considering we are following the COVID restrictions right now. But overall, we are just one big family.
So we have been promoting this through the Transition Meaford web blasts that we send every, especially seasonally before the fall for picking, and then in the late fall when we're doing applesauce making. We've definitely been promoting it on the Transition Meaford website. The list of people that first, I guess, yeah, the inherited list of people is pretty much Transition Meaford plus a lot of other people that we've been reaching out to through like fall fairs and harvest festivals in Meaford. I remember like the Christmas market, any visible place that you vend or have social presence at, we would have a list, a sign-up list for people to record their names. We haven't, I would actually have to say, we haven't gotten that many people through the sign-up list, but it's nice to be able to come at a place of invitation. Mm-hmm.
Well, for example, I know that when I came to see Noreen in Tobermory, we talk about that. I'd like to invite your group to come this year if you can manage to get and visit Meaford during the apple season or pear season. You're welcome to come, and we can organize picking with your group, and you can, whatever you can carry, you can take home. We don't really I know you're doing meal programs as well, and you have a big charity to fill in as well. And Danuta, same thing with you. We are definitely open to more people. Transition Meaford does not have a charitable status. That's a very good question. We are leaning on the local food bank, and we might be partnering with Meaford Rotary Club, but that's kind of in the discussions right now. So we are Transition Meaford is an organized, and very casual group of people that are very, very helpful. Yeah, Mary, do you want to add anything? What you think that we missed?
It's an excellent. I enjoyed your talk very much. I think you've covered an awful lot, Ivan and Simona. I really don't have a lot to say. But I really love the idea of involving as many in our community as we can, including all the way up to the Bruce and into Tobermory. It's wonderful. We've got all these apple orchards here in Meaford, and it's just a real thrill to have you come and we share with you. I really enjoy that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and we echo what we said, or what we said here, we just echoed to Natasha last month as well. It might seem like a bit of a drive to come to Meaford to pick apples, but the couple hours it takes you to drive here and back and have a whole plethora of apples you can then process and store for much later is definitely worth the time. You might find a few apples or a couple of loose trees here and there where you are locally, but you may not come to that amount of abundance or to be able to pick at that efficiency as you were to come to Meaford. And you wouldn't be able to meet us and do the socializing with us either.
Yeah, I'd like to say how appreciative we were in the fall and how much of a surprise it was when Simona came to help us plant garlic. She also brought the several crates of the apples. And so we were actually quickly able to put together an apple event, which isn't a very common thing in Tobermory, but it was it was well received. And we had Michelle, one of our food programs person, design an outdoor program for kids and families, and it was right around Halloween, so it was a nice event. And what she did was we grilled apples. We cut them, cored them, and cut them in rings and grilled them on a barbecue.
That's delicious.
And had whipped cream and salted caramel.
Maybe there is something to learn from you guys.
Yeah, yeah.
That was very popular, and we had some of the cider as well. Actually, Michelle did some pressing of the apples with a couple of people on the peninsula that do have presses. So
Wow.
we learned about that. So we do have some local people that are interested in apple pressing and cider. And the interesting thing we also were starting to learn a little more about and share is that we have a lot of wild apple. Well, they're considered wild apple trees on the Bruce. There was more farming here than there is now. So there's a lot of apple trees around that have gone just wild. People know where they are. So there was some talk about gleaning apples from these single trees. They tend to be quite old and interesting. But to make or to make cider out of Bruce Peninsula apples is maybe a challenge for us, but we might try it.
Thank you for sharing, Noreen. That's awesome. Danuta made a comment about getting connections in Georgian Bluffs. I wonder if there is a food bank or meal programs that you may be aware of.
There's a food bank in Wyerton, which is the next municipality over, South Bruce.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can connect with Amy. Do you know Amy Peterson?
Amy? No, I don't know her. Who is she?
She is part of the, I believe it's a CMHA. I connected with her last year. She came to Meaford Community Gardens and I shared some garlic. She's a part of the meal program and she's working with the gardens as well. Maybe we can get connections there if she's interested. So we can organize that. Well, The COVID, your question about the COVID restrictions. Well, when we were, the beauty of it is that most of the indoor was limited, the outdoor was not limited. So during the COVID, we definitely were able to pick apples, and maybe we spend more time on picking. That's why we have so much apples than processing. That's why I was trying to share with as many as I could, all the way from Tobermory to Hanover, because I felt that if we were not able to use the community kitchen this year, last year, and maybe not even this year. So definitely one of the another reason to get together and come to Meaford, because if we cannot process it, then it's very difficult to use all of it. So if anybody will come, you know, if it's even a couple that would come from each municipality and bring a few banana boxes to their neighborhood and share it there, that would be a huge help. And maybe the social aspect, I agree with you. Like we pick for an hour, and the car is absolutely top, depending what kind of car you have. But I always envision a school bus, obviously COVID permitting, but school bus coming from the Tobermory and Georgian Bluffs and whatnot, and coming to Meaford, and we have a social picnic and do something cool and sing a song or chant, and just to be, you know, free and enjoying the apples. It comes with it.
Simona, typically what size of group goes in to do a picking hour?
Good question. So during the COVID, we limited to 25 because that was the restriction for outdoor getting together. But pre-COVID, we didn't have a limit. Obviously, it also depends what the landowner tells us. If they are on the site and they don't want a huge, big group, but roughly, I think that we were maximum 25 people. That was, even pre-COVID, we would never get beyond, but we can schedule different days. The beauty of it is that if we pick with the locals, I can schedule another pick with the group that is coming. And if you tell me 5 or 10 of us coming from your way, then I'll just match it up. So we do some socializing on a side if it's permitted. But yeah, I think that I definitely like to cross-pollinate our groups and learn from each other and get a tips, because I found that that's how it travels, right?
Yeah.
I've got lots of questions, but it's obviously seasonal, right? So when you find you start to get busy with requiring volunteers and doing stuff?
Good question. So I would say in the middle of August, we start connecting with the landowners. We get confirmation how they are doing, whether they would like to share this year, if it's the same setup, if there is a new owner of orchards. So we reconnect with the landowner in August, and then pears are usually in September. I would say second, third week of September. It goes very quickly with pears. The pears have probably 1 or 2 week window for picking, because you don't want to pick them when they are too soft, because they are not really good for storage. They don't hold very well because they soften up very quickly. So for pears, it's a short window. For apples, I would say end of September all the way to the end of October easily. So September, October is definitely picking and harvesting, gleaning. And then October/November would be the processing and distributing. Any other question, Danuta? Okay, I think if we don't have any other more questions, it was delightful to be here and share that program with you. And please do contact us if you feel that your group would like to join us, or you personally would like to come. That's totally fine as well. Don't feel you have to have a group. You can come on your own and pick apples, and maybe on your way through Owensan, you can drop it off in O'Share or in Byerton Food Bank or Salvation Army or anywhere. I think that the whole idea is to share what the Mother Nature offered us.
Thanks everyone for coming. This recording will be made online available, so if you want to go back to share this webinar, it will be on GBSusNet under the Community Garden Network.
Perfect. Okay.